It's like, I say go, we go. So it's a mental training as well as it's a physical training, right? And when you do that over and over and then you say, I'm gonna do this, your brain doesn't negotiate. You've trained your own mind. He said, you got to think of it as one thing. It's all about adding value. How can you do more for others than anybody else in the world? If you can get yourself to love to do the stuff you hate to do, then there's no limit to the success you can have in your life. Because your mental emotional state is the single most important ingredient to not only success, but fulfillment. And most of us do not know how to manage it. Where focus goes, energy flows.
This is 60 minutes of Tony Robbins' best motivational speeches. This compilation definitely will change the lives of many people, so listen closely and enjoy.
People ask me all the time, what does it take to be happy? And I always tell them it's really simple. One word, progress. Progress equals happiness. If you keep growing, you're gonna feel alive. And if you keep growing, you're gonna have more to give. And when you're growing and giving is when life is magnificent. It doesn't matter how many statues, Oscars they give you, or Emmys, or how much money you have in the bank. We've all seen people have all those things and I get the phone call because they're depressed or somebody commits suicide in that area. So it's really an inner game. And I think that's what's missing for us today. People, the first question people go to is how? And that's the wrong question. How is absolutely the wrong question to start with, because if you've never done it before, what that produces is uncertainty. If you have uncertainty, then you don't execute at the same level. It's like people say knowledge is power. We all know that's bullshit, right? Execution is power. Knowledge is potential power. Execution beats knowledge every day of the week. So my bias is towards action. Even if it's the wrong action, you're gonna learn quicker than if you do nothing. But the challenge is people are asking how, and that produces uncertainty. What you gotta ask is what and why. If you know what needs to be done and why it needs to be done, if it's strong enough, then there's a level of certainty that will show up in your nervous system and you'll be able to inspire it in other people as well, because you can't fake it. Everybody can feel it. Everybody's focusing on the outside world, and how there's a lot of things in the outside world you'll never be able to control. You can influence, but you can't control it. This, your mind, your emotions, your body, you have 100% control over what you do with these things, and that's where the game is won. You win the inner game, then you win the outer game. But a lot of people spent their life trying to win the outer game, they won and they're miserable. So to me, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And so many people are focused on success still, which to me is like, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's like success is getting what you want. Fulfillment is living what you're made for. You know, and it's like fulfillment and success, they're not even the same universe. And there's nothing wrong with going for success, but you really got to figure out what you're made for, and nobody knows in the beginning. So you start where you are and you do what's in front of you, do what's next, and you keep growing until you start to discover, hey, this is my real passion, this is my real hunger and drive, and it can change. People go for 5, 6, 7 years and then they usually question their business, their career, their body, their relationships. And then one of two things happens. They change direction and feel renewed, or they go, no, I got a great deal here, what the hell's wrong with me? And they recommit and they get stronger. But that's life. And if you don't grow, I don't give a damn how much you got going for you, you're gonna be miserable. What you have to look at today is, number one, you gotta invest in yourself, just like we talked about earlier. You gotta make you more skilled and more powerful and more effective so that you can command more going forward economically. So whether there's inflation or not, it doesn't affect you. And because there's gonna be inflation for probably a period of time here. We're gonna see a tough environment. The second thing is to keep feeding your mind and your emotions so that you don't freak out like everybody else. Then the third thing is you do have to get in the game. You know, it's like the first thing you should do is stop being a consumer and become an owner. I mean, you and I both know that's not what most people are. If you own an Apple phone and you don't own Apple, that's a giant mistake. I'm not saying that Apple this price or that price. It's just over time, if you're a consumer, you lose. Where focus goes, energy flows. Most people are focused on what they're afraid of, and so more fear comes their way. And it's easy because we all have a 2 million-year-old brain that's designed to look for what's wrong, to protect, so we protect ourselves, to fight it, or to run for it, or to freeze, right? That's the way our old brain is wired. It's a 2 million-year-old brain. But that brain's never gonna make you happy. You have to learn to take control of your focus. And if you focus on, oh my God, it's never gonna work, or you listen to somebody who tells you, oh, COVID's gonna be here forever, and we're never gonna have any freedom again, and you focus on that, you can get really depressed, as most people have. We've had 100,000 people overdose on drugs. We have more depression and more people in a suicidal mode than we've ever seen in the last 2 years, because people need a compelling future. You can deal with a tough today if you got a compelling tomorrow. And so what I help people do is design that. But once you change your focus, you'll change how you feel. Focus and feeling go together. My original teacher was Jim Rohn. I met him when I was 17. And I wanted to know why all my fathers were broke, because they were good men. You know, I loved all four of my fathers. And I remember him saying, Tony, we're all equal as souls, but we're not equal in the marketplace. I was like, what does that mean? And he said, well, think about it. He goes, you need to become more valuable if you want to have economic freedom. He said, you have to work on yourself more than anything else, and you have to work on it in a way where there's something you can do for others better than anyone else, or at least more, at a better quality. And he gave me an example of like working at McDonald's, and he said, you know, if you work at McDonald's, you know, you make whatever it was in those days, $5 an hour, whatever it was. And he said, you know, I go, yeah, but that seems so unfair. And he goes, yeah, and teachers, I give the example of teachers, and there's these billionaires, you know, that make $1 billion in a year, hedge fund guy, you know? And he said, Tony, the guy you just mentioned, he provided a 40% return last year, and that went to nonprofits and everything else. He said, that means those organizations double their money almost every 2 years. He is adding massive value, hundreds of $1 billion, so they made $1 billion. He goes, this person is doing a job that anyone can learn in 20 minutes or half a day. So it's a beginning job. He said, you got to think of it as one thing. It's all about adding value. How can you do more for others than anybody else in the world? And that stuck with me. I mean, I was just like, I decided I wanted to do more for others than anybody in the world. In order to do that, I had to have certain skills, and I went after those skills, and I still do. Like, it's a never-ending thing. If you think you're a master, you're full of it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably some of the best advice I've received, at least on life and business and direction, and it affected my mission.
Another reason why somebody doesn't exercise or do anything is because they don't just chunk it too big, they chunk it in too many details. I'll give you a perfect example. So I asked somebody one time, I said, okay, how important is exercise? Oh, exercise is extremely important. Really? Okay, good. And tell me, why don't you exercise regularly? Well, I just don't have time. Okay, everybody gives that answer. That sounds wonderful. So tell me though, don't tell me about how much time you don't have. Tell me this. When you think about exercising, what do you think about? Which is a way of saying, what do you focus on? And so this woman says to me, well, my gosh, you know, I mean, what do you mean what do I think about? Well, let's say I said to you, you got to start exercising, and I'm going to put a gun to the head of your children, and I will do very horrible things and hurt them badly if you don't exercise. Could you do it? Oh yeah, I could do it. Remember this. Change is never a matter of ability. It's always a matter of motivation. I'll say that again. Change is never a matter of ability. It's always a matter of motivation or drive, having strong enough reasons. If you got a strong enough reason, you could figure out the time, couldn't you?
You got to understand there's two choices. There's fear and there's faith. And as simplistic as that sounds, I ask people, what's the difference? And they get confused. And I said, it's really simple. They're both made up. No one knows for sure what the future looks like. And by the way, when I say the 7 or 8 years, it's not all just tough economic times. There's going to be a confrontation with China. Maybe there'll be a cyber war. Maybe someone will turn off your electricity. There's zero question we're on target for that. If anybody wants to get a better understanding, they can read some of Ray Dalio's work on the changing world order and understanding what's happened over 1,000 years of history. But the point of the matter is, it's not all dark. That's number one. But number two is, what's the difference between fear and faith? They're both imagination. But fear is imagination undirected. It's like weeds, just grows automatically. Faith is you decide to be certain, you take action, you follow through. There's no guarantee of anything. There's no guarantee. I mean, people run around with a mask and they walk outside and get hit by a truck.
By the way, hit the like button and follow my YouTube channel. The next episode with Andrew Tate is coming.
You start thinking the problem's permanent. No problem is permanent. Or you start thinking the problem's pervasive because I haven't handled my finances, my whole world's over. Or because my relationship's bad, my whole world's over. Your life is bigger than that. Or all this is happening because there's something wrong with me. When you get to that point, you stop trying. And so my goal right now is to shake that up for people. People need a new perspective, and you can't do it by just sitting and thinking. You got to move your body. You got to change your energy and your focus, because low level of energy, I don't think how smart you are, you're not going to use all your ability. But if I get you into a higher state of being, mentally, emotionally, physically, then all of a sudden you start remembering who you are and you start coming up with answers that you never even thought were possible before. I think the most important habit to start with is having something that you care about more than yourself. A mission. It could be your family, it could be photography, it could be your business, it could be, something you want to do in your community, it could be humanity, but I don't mean virtue signaling. I mean, what you're really driven by. And when people have something that they care about more than themselves, they don't run out of energy, they don't run out of excitement, because if it's just about you, it's easy to get comfortable. And comfort makes you not grow. People ask me all the time, Tony, you meet millions of people. What's the secret to happiness? And I always laugh and say it's pretty simple. It's one word: progress. Progress equals happiness. Because if you're not making progress, you're not growing. And there's only a few rules in the universe. They're not mine. They're the universe. Everything grows or dies. And everything contributes beyond itself, or it's eventually eliminated by evolution. And so, for me, growing and giving is the game. And so you got to find something that makes you want to keep growing and giving so you don't get comfortable. You can't sit at the table of success too long or you get fat and bored, right? So we need to feel alive. A lot of people achieve a goal and then their brain goes, is this all there is? Or even if you achieved a goal you loved, it's like you loved it. How long did you stay excited about whatever you succeeded at? You may have worked on it for years. Did you stay excited for a year? Almost never. 9 months, 6 months, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 hours, because you're not supposed to stay just satisfied, because our nature is to grow, and when we grow, we have something to give. So to me, that's the core. And so the bottom line is you need to be good at pattern recognition, and that's what gets somebody strong at anything. I mean, you look at, why is Amazon doing so well? He realized one pattern was valued over anything else: convenience. Right? If you look at Tom Brady, a friend of mine, he's got pattern recognition like nobody else at 43 years old. He's able to do things no one dreamed could be done. He's got more Super Bowl rings than any team. So I said, I want to go to the best people on earth and see what do they see that none of us see. What's the pattern? Then you got to learn pattern utilization. It's one thing to see it, it's another thing to use it. And then if you're good after a while, you get to pattern creation. It's like if you learn to play the piano, most people play other people's music. And then there's a point you've learned so much that you're able to create. And I think those 3 skills are the most important skills. So I look at the areas that matter most and say, who already has that extraordinary pattern recognition utilization? So I go to Ray Dalio, who's returned more money to investors than anyone alive. He's going to have a different level of understanding than the average person.
What's the most powerful pattern of all? You've heard me talk about it before, that changed humanity, that took us from starving, running around as hunter-gatherers, to where we could stay in one place. It was one distinction. What was it? Recognizing the seasons. Understanding. See, before that, it was looked random. You planted in the winter. You didn't even know it was winter. You just knew it was cold. And for some reason, you worked your ass off and you got nothing for it. And what I began to look at here is like humanity, once it understood the seasons and knew when to plant and when not to. If you do the right thing at the wrong time, what kind of reward do you get? Zilch, nothing. So all of a sudden, humanity understood this, and now we could stay in one place. We could build a community, we could build cities, we could build countries. That one distinction changed all of humanity. But there's also the seasons of your own life that's so valuable to understand. Think of it as 4 seasons of your life. 0 to 20, roughly, is your springtime. But that initial springtime, you're learning, you're growing, probably protected, you're absorbing things. That's the stage. Some people starts at 16, 14, some say 19, 20, but let's just call it around 21, you enter a different stage of life. You become kind of the soldier of life. You enter the summertime. 21 to 41, that's a different stage, isn't it? Now you go out in the world and say, I'm going to test this stuff. I was told all this, what's true? And you think you're going to be a billionaire or 10 times billionaire, and you're going to be president of the United States, and you're going to have 100 relationships, and it's all going to work out smoothly. And then you get your first relationship and discover none of that is true. And you start to understand that you have vulnerabilities, you find out you're not invincible. So this young adulthood is testing and discovering, just trying to figure out what's really real. That's when we learn a lot. And usually some of it is painful because it's not quite like we expected. But you're the soldier of society. Quite literally, that's where soldiers are, right? 21 to 41 usually, right? You're the person that goes to war. You're the person that's out there doing the hard work. Now, if you really grew in spring and you really grew in summer, then there's the fall, the autumn. And that means 42 to 62 is a real reaping time if you've grown. If you're not grown, like if you don't plant in the spring, you're going to weep in the fall. You're not going to reap in the fall, right? But if you push through the hot summer, it's a difficult time, those 21 to 41. By the way, when you ask people, when you do all the research on people, what's the most unhappy time of their life? It's that 2 decades. Not for every human, but for most. Because trying to figure out who the hell you are, prove to yourself, make it through all the bullshit, trying to figure what's going on in your life. But when you get to 42 to 62, again, if you've grown, if you've not grown, you're kind of stunted. There's not much crop. But now you're really in your midlife power, and you get to start to have a harvest time. This is for a lot of people their greatest financial time of their life, because they built up understanding and they worked hard and developed skill sets, and now they're in a position to lead. They might start running an organization. They start to really grow, to expand. And then 63 to 83, you could think of as winter, and 83 to 120 is the oldest living humans. If you're fortunate enough, maybe you'll have an extended winter. But in this stage, you really end up being a leader who's really there to mentor. That's really the position you're in. It's like what I love most now. It's like the example I give you of playing a video game against a child. You know the child's always going to win. And it's not because they're faster or smarter. It's because they played this game a million times. They know the first bad guy's here, the next bad guy's here, the next bad guy's here. So they're able to do something really important. This is what today is all about, if you want it in a simple phrase. Anticipation is power. Anticipation is power. Leaders anticipate. Losers react. If you and I are going to have a great quality of life for our families, for our communities, for anybody we want to serve, our job is to anticipate. In order to do that, you got to recognize patterns. So these seasons of your life are precious. Every season has different challenges, right? How many can remember some of the challenges of the springtime of your life? I remember some of the challenges of the summer in that stage, the things you wrestled with. Some are still there. How many remember the fall experiences, right? So everything has opportunity, everything has challenge, and if you can anticipate the challenge, you can make that season a hell of a lot more enjoyable.
Ultimately, I really believe that probably the most sacred thing in our lives that we can give another human being besides our love is our labor. You think about it, your labor is your energy, it's your time, it's your emotion, it's your intellect, it's your spirit to some extent. And if you can find a way where what you do for a living activates that sense of what you're made for, then work is not work, whether you be in Fiji or whether you be in an environment that might seem less exciting and promising in the moment. And trust me, I worked in plenty of those too, but with the same level of excitement and passion, because I found what turns me on, that makes me feel alive, makes me feel like I'm doing something that's worthwhile. And on Labor Day, I think a lot of people, it's just a holiday to get away and take time off of labor. And my hope is to trigger you to think about, how could you turn your labor into your love? I think it was Mark Twain who said, when your vocation becomes your vacation, that's when life becomes truly magnificent. And I'm privileged enough to have that, but I pursued it. And one of the secrets that I found, and I know you know this in your soul, is that we all know if you're going to be masterful at something, you don't show up, as the best in the world at something. You don't show up in environments that you want to be in. You get there because you did things for thousands and thousands of hours. Most of you know the concept of mastery taking 10,000 hours. It's an arbitrary number, but I'm sure you've heard about it. You want to get really good at something, it's 10,000 hours, because when you do something enough, with enough intensity, enough intention to constantly get better, when your labor is your love, and where your labor is something you have to always get better at, then usually what happens is you get these insights that allow you to serve more. But I also think that labor, we're talking about this weekend, what makes people fulfilled by their labor is their motives for it. If your motive is just to make money or just to pay your bills or just to get rich or whatever you think that's going to be, those people never really are fulfilled even if they make the money. The most fulfilled human beings in my experience, and I've had the privilege of working with literally 4 million people from 125 countries now around the world, the people that are most alive, regardless of the economics, are people that have found something that they really feel the motive is more than just themselves. People think they have to know how. I call it the tyranny of how. Like, you get all excited, I'm gonna do this, and then your brain goes, I've never done it before, oh my God, what did I say? I don't know how to do this. And they tend to focus on how to do it. And when you start with how, you're screwed. Like, Martin Luther King had no idea how when he did his I Have a Dream speech. In fact, his wife was the one that pushed him because he was uncertain, right? If you know the real history, it's pretty interesting. But the bottom line is he gets up there and he gives his vision of how it can be done. He talked about what needs to happen and why. If you can figure out what you want and why you want it, and you get strong enough reasons that'll drive you late at night, it'll get you up early in the morning, and the reasons are different. Some people do it for nitty-gritty reasons. Some people do it for their kid. Some people will do it, like we'll almost all do it for something more than ourselves. Some people do it because they like winning, right? I know that about you. right? It's like, I like winning. I like being the best at what I do. So I'm not going to settle for less than that. Why would I? Right? So you got to find your reasons. But if you know what you want and you get a big enough why, now you'll figure out how to do it. But if you start with how, the small brain, the fear brain, goes, oh shit, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do 90% of the time either. I know what and why, and then I try something. It doesn't work, I try something else. No, there's something else. Now I speed it up by learning from the best. So that's why, Money Master the Game is a perfect example. My companies, at the time were $100 million companies. I had one $500 million company. Now we're doing $7 billion. I took what I learned from these guys, I applied it not only to my investing, I applied it to my own businesses. Why do I reinvent the wheel when I just learned from the best on earth? I mean, somebody who's that good can tell you that little 2 millimeter thing that changes everything. So my life is really about learn from the best, but I don't start with the how. I start with the what and the why. Whether you're angry or whether you're worried, those are biochemical effects, but they're all based on what you focused on. If you were really angry, like they did it again, they're probably screwing around with somebody else. If you imagine that in your mind, you're going to be upset. But if you were worried, you thought, what if they're in a car accident? You're going to get a very different biochemical effect. But people have habits of what they focus on. And those habits become your biochemical habits as well. And so they reinforce each other. It's not a one-way street. So that's why, I really believe exercise is one of the most important elements, pushing someone beyond their normal comfort zones physiologically, while you simultaneously are working on their head, creating something. So you need strong physiology. You need a really clear focus because you're only experiencing what you focus on. The human brain is a distortion, deletion, and generalization device. Your conscious mind can only handle so many things at once. You're not thinking about your clothing touching your skin or the sound of your heartbeat till I mention it, or let's say the sound of in your ear of being able to hear that heartbeat. All those things I have to call your attention to because your brain is deleting most of what's going on, so it's not overwhelmed consciously. So we pay attention to a small amount of things. So if you're really happy, you're deleting all the things that could piss you off or make you worried. If you're really worried, you're deleting all the things you could be grateful or happy about. So, and we tend to generalize our lives because we're cognitive misers. We don't want to think things through. So if you have strong physiology, strong focus, then the third piece is meaning is what creates emotion. Like if somebody says something and you go, they're disrespecting me, or they're challenging me, or they're coaching me, or they're loving me. Well, whichever word you select for those sensations in your body, your biochemistry becomes. We could take our work and think of work as being like a gift. I personally believe that one of the greatest gifts outside my love that I can give another human being is my labor. But there's 3 gifts of labor you might have within your nature, meaning you can master anything, but under stress, people tend to go back to their true nature. And there are 3 gifts of labor that you can give. One of those gifts we might call the gift of being an artist or a talent, or another word for it would be a truly skilled producer. Some people, the reason you know this is your gift is what you love to do is to create a product or service and deliver it to people, and you're enamored by that. So when someone is in it as an artist, and by the way, most businesses are started by artists. There's somebody who was an amazing negotiator, an amazing fashion designer, amazing code writer. And they said, I work for this company and they don't do a good job for customers and I can do a better job. I don't work for them. And they start their own company thinking that the company is all driven just by the sales or the negotiation or the code or the fashion. But a company is much more complex than that, especially as it grows. So an artist is in it for the impact. And yes, they want to make money, don't get me wrong, but it's not the first thing and they won't trade it. When I talk to artists about selling their business, they look at me like I'm trying to sell their child. The second gift you might have is the gift of being a manager leader. A manager leader is someone who lives to manage people and processes. They love to figure out how to maximize a business by changing the gears, creating a new process, working with people. And those people love it. Now, they are not artists in that their talent or skill, they're not there delivering it directly to the client. They want to work on the people that are directly delivering the client. They want to work on the system that makes this business work. And so they think differently. They're inspired by different things. They make different decisions. Is one better or worse than the other? Yes or no? No, they're just different. And by the way, you might say I have both those skills. I bet you do, but they're not equal because they're different types of skills. So you might have them both, But there's one that is your true nature, that when things are going well, you're going to go back to it. When things are really up, you're going to go back to it. Under stress and under excitement, we return to our nature. By the way, a great company can't be great without great artists, talent, who really deliver extraordinary products or services. A company cannot maintain greatness and grow unless they have some great manager leaders who can run the process and the people. They're both critical components. The third choice of service, the third gift you can give, is that of an entrepreneur. And while most of you in this room would call yourself an entrepreneur and you would be entrepreneurial, by this definition, it's a little different. Most people think of an entrepreneur as anybody who starts multiple businesses. No, that's not true. Some artists start multiple businesses because they want to get all kinds of things for all kinds of people. Some managers want to do multiple businesses so they feel like they have multiple systems. But an entrepreneur is in it for one thing, the juice of risk. They want to make money. And by the way, an entrepreneur, will they sell this business? Yes or no? For the right price, they'll sell anything. And their mindset is, sell it, I'll start another one. Sell it, I'll buy another one. They are not attached. They might enjoy the product or service. They might be proud of the product or service, but they're in it for the risk. And they're the kind of person that when they lose massively, they jump up, dust themselves off, and want to do it again. People get vested in their trauma. People get vested in their pain. If you want to know the largest drug on the planet, it's not cocaine. It's not heroin. It's not pot. It's not, some prescription drug. The biggest, drug on the planet is problems. Because everyone has a deep fear. Everyone. And the deepest fears we have are two. One is that we're not enough. We're not smart enough, young enough, rich enough, pretty enough, funny enough, something enough. And if we're not enough, it's the deepest fear we have, which is we won't be loved. And love is the oxygen of the soul. So, a baby is, if they're not physically, kinesthetically loved, they develop what's called failure to thrive syndrome. That's how desperate our nervous system is for love. So human beings, when they think, oh my God, if I fail at this, it'll look like I'm not enough and I won't be worthy of love, they tend to come up with a reason why that's either not their fault. It's something that was done to me. I've got ADHD. I was born with it. I was raped. I was whatever. And they might even tell the truth. Someone may have really raped them. It's a horrible situation. But other people have raped and they've gotten through it and they're on the other side of it. This person hasn't because it becomes their reason for not being where they want to be in their life. And so the bottom line is a mother can lose her daughter or son through a drunk driver and spend the rest of their life in pain. And another one creates MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and does something about it and feels a sense of freedom and a sense of serving that child and a sense of higher purpose in what they're doing. So it's not the problem. It's not the trauma. It's finding what they value more than the problem. And everyone has a place where there's something they value more than their trauma. Some people get out their trauma because they realize I've been so traumatized, the loss of this child, that my other child feels completely unloved. And they realize I'm losing that love. I'm losing that child if I don't get my shit together, right? They need a higher level of what's called leverage. Leverage is what makes change a must, not a should. As long as it's a should, you'll have your story. And your story could be a true story. And you'll tell your story and share your story with yourself or other people or both. And you stay stuck. But trauma is, it is not, it's a bruise. It's not a tattoo. Right? Any bruise can be healed, but not unless you're vested in healing it. And what a lot of people do, I remember when I was diagnosed with a tumor in my brain, I've seen this happen so much that I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell my spouse at the time, the first day. I was trying to process it because I didn't want people to start treating me differently. And so the only person who knew for the first day or two was my assistant because she had talked to the doctor. So before I'd even been able to tell my spouse at the time, all of a sudden, everyone treated me like I was indestructible. I taught people to do that. It's like, because I want to help everybody. So there was no. It's like, I'll do whatever it takes, right? So it was inhuman at the time. And suddenly my assistant started saying, we shouldn't book that right now. And we shouldn't do this right now. And I started getting love and attention and connection for having this problem. And I was like, whoa. I'm not going to go down that slippery slope. But that takes a really conscious mind to do it. And lucky for me, I've had a chance to deal with millions of people. So I see these patterns all the time. But most people, their problem is their drug. It's the drug against the fear that I'm not enough and I won't be loved. Even if they go, no, it's me, I'm so messed up. What they're really saying is reassure me, love me. They're wanting that connection through their problem. So you got to decide there's something you value more than your problem. When you decide that, you can make it happen. I look for who are the people producing the greatest results, not who can talk a good game, who's producing the result. A lot of people can talk about it. It's interesting. I'm a results guy. And I believe in modeling. My original teacher was a man named Jim Rohn, you probably heard of, and he used to always say, success leaves clues. If you want something, make it a study, immerse yourself. So when I wrote Money Master the Game, I said, okay, I've been coaching Paul Tudor Jones, one of the top 10 traders for 25 years. I know more than most people ever know in a lifetime, but I want to know it all. So I'm going to interview 50 of the smartest financial people on earth. Ray Dalio, Carl Icahn, right? Warren Buffett. I want to interview people that started with nothing and became multi-billionaires. And they're all different. But my whole belief is you look for, there's like 3 skill sets that we all should have if we're great. And you're really good at these, Jim. I'm not throwing smoke your way. It's just the truth. What's made you great, what makes me great, what made everything take off for any type of business or life is understanding pattern recognition. If you understand pattern recognition, you know what to do with finance. If you understand pattern recognition, you know what to do in business. If you're great at pattern recognition with music, you can do an amazing job. If you're good at pattern recognition with dancing, you can move your body in ways most people never dream of. The people that become masters at pattern recognition, but then pattern utilization, they recognize the pattern, but then they use it. Those are the people that have extraordinary lives. And then there is 1/3 level, and that is pattern creation, where you literally start, you played other people's music so much, and now you know enough that now you're able to create your way of doing things. And I think those 3 skill sets are there. So my process is who's the best in the world on earth and how to get access to them. And at this stage of my life, that's not that difficult to do. But even with the money book, I knew some of them, but then I'd say, listen, I get 4 or 5 people I knew to refer me, and I'd say, give me 30 minutes. My average interview was 3.5 hours. I remember Jack Bogle, who's now passed away, who created Vanguard, saying, I invited Tony Robbins into my house for 30 minutes, and 3.5 hours later, I had the most probing interview of my entire career, because, I'm pulling those tools out. And once they saw the level I was playing the game at, then they wanted to help. And that's, now Ray Dalio is a good friend of mine. So the people I have access to that I can pitch and catch with, because I immerse myself and because I learned from all the people around them, it gave me a greater base. So that's what I do with anything. But then I try to take that complexity, like finance, with all these people and all the different approaches. Some are macro traders, some are value traders, et cetera, and say, what are the common denominators? How do I simplify that so we can actually use it?
Why is identity so important for us to shape a positive, powerful identity?
Well, first of all, so everybody understands what I mean by identity is we all have a way of identifying ourselves. We have a way of labeling ourselves. So most of us came up with our labels based on how we behaved. But really smart people can do stupid things. Really nice people can be mean. Mean people can be nice. And so if you judge yourself too soon, and most people's identity, their labels for themselves, who they think they are, has been based on their past and often many years ago. And so they don't update it. So the metaphor I'd give for identity is like, it's your comfort zone. It's not your goals. So if you took a temperature in the room and it said 68 degrees is my comfort zone, physically, emotionally, financially, I want more in my relationship. I want more physically, energy-wise. I want more financially in my career, but this is what I'm used to. And so what happens? People stay in their comfort zone for the most part. And then let's say something happens and you dip. You're a 68 degreer, that's your mentality, and you drop down to 62, 61, 60, somewhere around 60 or 59, the heaters kick on and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're a 68 degreer. What the hell are you doing? We've all experienced that. All of a sudden you go, I'm not going to live like this anymore. I'm not going to be in this relationship. I'm not going to be fat like this. Boom. And you get this drive and you start to change. But what most people don't understand is it happens on the upper end too. Meaning, let's say you got momentum, you start crushing it, you start doing even better than you think. You go from 68 to 70, 88, you're at 98 degrees, financially, emotionally, spiritually, whatever the metaphor is. And then what happens? You're going to say, hey, your brain goes, who the hell do you think you are? You're not a 98 degreer, right? Get back to 68. And if nothing else, the heaters stop, you lose your drive, and that'll drift you back. And not enough, the air conditioner can kick on, and you start to kind of sabotage yourself till you get back to your comfort zone. So unless you expand your identity, change is temporary. It's like when someone says to me, I've stopped smoking, it's been 8 days. And I go, why are you counting? And I say, why are you counting? So you can tell people how long you lasted this time? Ooh. Like if I went to somebody and I said to you, hey, Louis, you want a cigarette? You're not going to say, what brand is it? You go, no, right. I'm not a smoker. Notice how people are, I'm not one of those. That's not my identity. That fear that we're not enough is what's getting in the way. And you don't get over it. you get beyond it. And the way you get beyond it is you just train yourself. And as you just said, that's why in the seminars, it isn't just the content. It's putting you in a state where the content can land. Yeah. And when you put yourself in that state on a regular basis, those flows happen. Now, you want daily practices as well. So, every day I've got a variety of daily practices, but one of those things, I jump in freezing cold water every day, I think but I don't do it because I like it or I want it. There's never a day I look forward to it. Right. But I don't hesitate. I don't negotiate with myself. It's both physically great because it flushes your blood and your lymph system completely. And you feel like $1 million coming out of it. Going in it is painful as hell. But it's like, I don't say in a minute, when I'm ready, or maybe tomorrow. It's like, I say go, we go. So it's a mental training as well as it's a physical training, right? And when you do that over and over, and then you say, I'm going to do this, your brain doesn't negotiate. You've trained your own mind. So the most important factor in your life is the ability to manage your mental, emotional state. It is the one thing you have complete control of once you learn how. Then it becomes just the daily discipline. And it's not even discipline. It just becomes habit. To say, I'm not going to live in this lousy pace. I'm not going to put up with it. I know what to do. Let me do it. Let me move forward. But that's why, I do programs and events where I immerse people. Yeah. Because, you and I can talk about this to you and just kind of nod your head. But if I put you in an experience, correct. I always tell people a belief is a poor substitute for an experience. You can have a belief about China. I take you to China, you're going to have an experience. It's very different. So true. And so I think human beings need to put themselves more in experiences. A lot of us today, especially with COVID, being stuck at home and doing business from home, a lot of people are stuck in their head. Yeah. I tell people, get in your head, you're dead. You'll just go in circles. Get in your head. You got to get that body and that energy moving, and then your head will start to work as well. And so instead of finding the limitations, find the strengths, or decide what every great leader does, create your own culture. Right? That's what a leader does. They don't adapt to the culture. I'm sure you've heard the old phrase that says, reasonable people adapt to the culture, unreasonable people adapt the culture to themselves. That's why all breakthroughs come from unreasonable people. I'm paraphrasing. That's not the right language, but that's the essence of it. And so it's like you have to then find within yourself that I have so much passion, so much certainty. I'm going to build that certainty. And instead of getting overwhelmed by all the things you got to do, you're going to say, let me just make sure every day I'm making progress. There's so many ways that we define ourselves, and identity is just the culmination of the beliefs you have about who you are. But those beliefs control how you think, how you feel, what you perceive, how you interact with people, what you're willing to do, not willing to do. The most powerful force in the human personality is the need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. And, if you think of someone who's having, quote, an identity crisis, what is that? They turn a certain age and they quickly question everything they had accepted. A belief is something you feel absolutely certain about. You don't believe something if you start to question it. You produce doubt. And so sometimes there are certain stages of life where someone suddenly goes out and has this identity crisis and they buy a sports car or whatever the case may be, and they change their hair and they do everything else. But what's really happening is they're trying to redefine themselves, having defined themselves a long time ago. And we all have these ways of defining ourselves. But let me give you an example of just how powerful it is. So I'll give you a simplistic example. I don't know if you ever smoked cigarettes or know someone who did. But if you go to someone who smokes cigarettes and no longer does, and you said to them, would you like a cigarette? They wouldn't say to you, what brand is it? What would they say to you? No, I'm not a smoker. I'm not one of those. And that's really important because we define ourselves by what we are and by what we're not. And it's not effortful when you're not a smoker. It's not effortful if you say, I'm a health nut, to, not smoke. It's just not part of your world. You don't even consider it because that need to stay consistent with how you define yourself is the basis of a human being's basic personality making decisions. Now, the downside of this, of course, is you can create a negative identity for yourself. You can have an identity that says, let's say you've put things off a lot and, you're about to go do something and then you get fearful. Everybody has the fear of failure, the fear of something, of the unknown. And the last minute, you don't do it. And then you say, I'm really going to do this. And you do it again and again. After a while, you don't want to disappoint yourself. So you might develop a new identity and say, I'm a procrastinator. Well, once that's who you are, that behavior is going to be consistent. It is that powerful a control system on how we function as human beings. So anything you attach the words I am to over and over again, consistency with your language, with your emotion, and with an emotional intensity, you'll eventually become it because it becomes a belief, and a belief is self-fulfilling. Whether you think you can, whether you think you can't, you're right. So I think this subject, being able to differentiate between having a certain feeling or acting a certain way and being that kind of person is huge. You can use this tool. When I'm working with somebody, I'm looking to create a lasting change. I'm looking to help that person shift how they perceive who they are permanently, not just what they were doing. And this person, by the way, told me at one point, he said, what do you want to accomplish? And I gave him some of my dreams and goals. And he said, well, those are big. He said, how many, private equity guys do you know? How many people, investment bankers do you know? And I said, no, I don't know, maybe a dozen. He goes, how many do you spend time with? I said, none. He said, I want you to go and spend time with them. I said, but I don't have something to give. I always have to give something. It's just my way I'm wired, right? I don't know what I really want yet or how to do it, because it doesn't matter. They're going to want to be around you, get around them. And I did this for months. And then suddenly one day, sure enough, he said, they're going to want to do a deal with you. And then somebody brought me this deal. And the deal at the time, made me about $40 million in 2 months when I'd never made $4 million in a year working 20-hour days. And then that deal fell apart afterwards. They wanted me to change the deal. And I learned from him, when somebody wants to change the deal, don't get pissed, think about what you want. And I put that in a new deal where I made $400 million 2 years later. So proximity is power. Put yourself in proximity, keep your passion alive, keep making progress, and make sure you're trying to innovate or grow every day in some way. Face your fears every single day. You'll find it'll change your life. But as I've experienced that over the decades, I also noticed that so many people who are great achievers were just not happy. I mean, I go to India, I usually go about every 12 to 18 months, and I remember when I first went there, I was like, this poverty was overwhelming to me. And it was so confusing to see people so happy, because all around them, they seemed to have such squalor. I'd see someone sitting in the street and there was just so much joy in their eyes if you took the time to feel them and talk with them instead of judging the environment. And then I'd come home to the United States where there's all this external abundance, and you'd find people, many of you know, I wrote Money Master the Game. I interviewed 50 of the smartest financial people in the world, self-made billionaires, and I wouldn't say the majority of them are really happy. And it has nothing to do with the money. It's that the internal world was not mastered. So if there's two sciences or two master skills, I think, in life that we want, it's like if we took East and West and put them together and we didn't make the other one wrong, we'd say, hey, it's mastering the science of achievement, but also the art of fulfillment. And of the two, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been traveling the country, really trying to get people to feel and experience the beauty that comes when what's inside is great, regardless of what's outside. The outside world will never make you happy long term. What you get will never make you happy. Who you become, what you experience, what you give, that's what makes us really happy. You don't know what's happening in the future and you're uncertain. You go like, oh, what do I want? I don't know. Because your mental emotional state is the single most important ingredient to not only success, but fulfillment. And most of us do not know how to manage it. And when I say manage it, I'm really talking about your mind and your emotions, right? Those are the two things that if you can master those, because most people are trying to master the outside world, and you can't control the outside world. You can influence it. But the one thing you can control is how you use your mind, what you do with your emotions. And if you think about the quality of your life, again, look at people who supposedly have everything and they're miserable. I get those phone calls from the people that are so, quote, famous, the great actors, the great musicians. They won the Academy Award. They just won the gold medal, and they're literally depressed. And the reason is because they thought getting something would eventually make them feel a certain way, and it does for this long. And then you're off to the next thing. And then, when you work so hard for something forever like that, it's not there. So what I really like people to understand is that the quality of your life is the quality of your emotions. If you have $1 billion and every day your habitual emotions are feeling frustrated and stressed and overwhelmed, your life is called frustrated, stressed, and overwhelmed. If you have 3 beautiful children and a great husband or a wife or boyfriend or girlfriend, and every day you worry, your life is not love. Your life is worry. It doesn't matter how you have this beautiful family. So think of it. Emotions control the quality of our life, and we have habitual emotions. That's why you'll see people who, they're always angry about something. I'm sure you know somebody like that. Or they're always worried about something. If they're not worried about somebody they know, they worry about something they don't even know, right? Or, some people that are, think they're funny and they're not, but they have a good time, Who do you want to hang out with? So learning how to direct your emotions, and emotions create everything. Everything you want in your quote unquote success will be driven by having certain drives of emotion. And, think about it. Emotions create wars. Emotions create peace eventually. Emotions are what get you in a relationship. Emotions, how we all got here. Somebody had sex and that was driven by emotion. So we are incredibly emotionally unfit today. When I was growing up, I grew up very poor, And I'm the oldest of three, and I had to do all the shopping, all the grocery shopping on my bicycle, come home, make the meal, and I was happy with all that. But then, right when you wanted to be done with your work and go watch sports or do something great, I had to wash the dishes. So I swore someday I will never do the labor of washing dishes. I will afford a dishwasher. I will find some way to not have to do dishes. I tell you this as a background because when I told him I couldn't be a furniture mover, he looks down and goes, oh, only one other job left, dishwashing. Now, dishwashing in India is a different labor than you might picture in your kitchen. And you're in this ashram, and I report, and there's these milk solids and yogurts on the floor, and you're standing in your bare feet, and you're taking these filthy dishes coming across, and it's 4 hours a day for 6 or 7 days. I'm telling you, I was so angry, I was so mad, I was mad at myself that I was there, and I was washing these dishes and upset, and plus I was a vegan, and I didn't like the fact there was milk on the floor. I was judgmental about everything. In the middle of all this stuff, after about an hour of being angry, I got tired of being angry, and some part of me kicked in and goes, damn, whatever you do, you're the best at it. Why don't you be the best damn dishwasher? So I started washing these dishes with a frenzy. I'm like, come on, guys, speed this thing up. And something magical happened. The thing that I thought was most disgusting and filled with labor and work became play. And I started to laugh at myself. And I thought, what an ego jerk you are to think that you're below washing some dishes. And then I got beyond my ego and jerk into, why not just enjoy whatever you do, and then when you do, all of a sudden it's not work anymore. And that was my great spiritual breakthrough. I eventually did meet with his guru and try to straighten him out, but he didn't think very much of an 18-year-old kid straighten him out. He laughed quite a bit. He did talk to my partners and said, I think you guys should just keep teaching what you're teaching, and Fit for Life went on to be one of the most successful books in history. But I can't claim credit for that. I was a part of that little piece. But I will tell you that if you can if you can get yourself to love to do the stuff you hate to do, then there's no limit to the success you can have in your life. If you can take the things that you're afraid you'd have to do to succeed in your business or to succeed in your life or to succeed in your relationship, there are things everybody doesn't want to do. And the more focused you are on how you're not going to do that, the more life seems to bring those things up for you and makes them barriers. I made the decision, it's the most important decision I believe of your life, that I'm not going to suffer anymore. Life's too short to suffer, and I'm going to live in a beautiful state every day. And the way I do it is I catch myself when I start to get that sense of stress, I let it go, and I see the idea go by. So your thoughts about this person messing up your business or not following through. If I was in a room with 10,000 people, I guarantee you 60, 70% of the business owners have the same thoughts at times, right? Yeah. I ask people all the time, tell me your most stressful thought. Oh, I'm worried about my children. This may happen. How many people have had that thought? Everybody. Yeah. I might not make it financially, blah, blah, blah. How many have had that? Everybody. My point is, it's not your thought. It's the mind, not your mind. When you think it's your mind, you identify with it, and you can't separate from yourself.
Right.
But when you realize these thoughts have been around for millions of years, and I'm just thinking the same thought that so many people have thought before. Like, how many people have ever thought, I'm going to kill this son of a bitch? Now, you didn't do it because you didn't believe you're really going to kill them. But you felt it. You said it. You were there, right? So we all have thoughts. It's only the stressful thoughts we believe that mess us up. So what I try to show people is, if you can start to realize these thoughts have been around for millions of years. If I told you 1,000,000 years, 1,000 or 100 years ago that we're going to go to the moon and back, you called me a lunatic or crazy. If I said 100 years ago, you're going to have a little box like this, it'll fit in your pocket, and you can click on it and you can see what the weather is any place. You can click on it and see a live person on the other side of the earth and talk to them by looking in this box. And the way it works is invisible waves are traveling around the earth, and it pulls invisible waves in the box. You go like, read between the lines. There's no way, you dumb idiot. It's never going to happen. So what I want you to realize is thoughts are invisible waves. When you turn on a TV, it takes invisible waves, and depending on the channel, you're going to see a love story or an adventure or a drama or a comedy, or a horror. The way you use your body determines which of those thought waves come through you. And that's why you're successful. All successful people tend to focus on the future. All people that are overwhelmed tend to focus on the past because you can't change it. But so you say, the past is past, so let it go, right? Yeah. So imagine, just for a second, somebody's home, they're a strong, smart person, but they're not feeling strong and smart because they've been sedentary. They're not using their body. And when you don't use your body, you don't have that kind of energy. I don't care who you are, right? You're constantly hearing fear coming at you from all the news that's around there. And so people tend to focus on what's missing, what they can't control, and they think about the past and will the future ever be like that? But none of these patterns are going to help you. But you can change all three. You can train yourselves to focus on what you're grateful for, what you have, and you can always build on success. That's what creates momentum. You can train yourself to be able to say, okay, if that was missing, that's no problem with it. Here's how I'm going to go after it. Here's how I can find the answer if I don't have the answer. And you can train yourself to enjoy this moment while you're building your future. So those three decisions alone, I could give you a dozen. But I'll give an example. I ask people sometimes in seminars, and I've got, 15,000, 30,000 people in a stadium, and I'll say, how many of you know someone who takes antidepressants and they're still depressed? And 90% of the people raise their hand all over the world. And so how could you take antidepressants and still be depressed? Well, because all they do is numb you. In fact, on the side of the box, it says can create suicidal thoughts. So numbing you doesn't deal with the problem. As long as you're constantly focusing on what you don't have or is missing, as long as you're focused on what you can't control, you're going to find yourself not having what you want. So it's not that difficult, but what people need is they need to shake it up. One day I asked him, I said, what is the secret to wealth? And he looked at me, paused, this big smile, and his eyes got really bright like they always did. And he said, Tony, it's what you teach. I said, well, I teach a lot of things, which thing? And he said, gratitude. He said, because you and I, Tony, know billionaires that are miserable, and it's because they're not grateful for what they have. And we both know people have no money, seemingly, but they're so grateful for their health, for their husband, for their wife, for their children. They're so grateful to God. They're so grateful for their life that they're rich. So I think it starts with that gratitude. It starts with that connection to grace, as simplistic as that sounds. And so it's not enough just to have your financial plan. You can have all the money and be miserable. Let's have the money and be really rich emotionally, psychologically.
Just to entrepreneurs in general, and you're an entrepreneur, wildly successful entrepreneur, and you work with and are friends with many, many of the top entrepreneurs in the world. What are a few of the common attributes of the super successful entrepreneurs that you've seen? That might not be the obvious ones that come to mind.
Well, gosh, I'll give you one example because I was just talking to him yesterday. Mark Benioff's a dear friend of mine, and he runs a company called Salesforce.com. He founded it. Mark went to my Unleash the Power Within event about 15 years ago. He went to it 3 times. Repetition's the mother skill. He immersed himself in it. Again, a pro, not going to do something average. Comes up to me and introduced himself and says, Tony, he said, you've changed my life. I'm working for Oracle. I'm leaving. I'm starting this company, Salesforce.com. We're going to change the business world. I'll never forget. He said, we're going to do $100 million in business. I was teasing him the other night. He's going to do $7 billion this year, right? And I've been on that 15-year journey with him. What do they have in common? They have a sense of something they want to serve greater than themselves. The only challenge sometimes in network marketing, and I think what gives it a bad reputation for some people, is you get people in there that really act like they're doing it for something larger than themselves, but it really is only them. Now, there's nothing wrong with you wanting to profit and be successful, but motive does matter. And the most successful entrepreneurs have a motive that includes themselves, but they want to do something that's going to change the world, make the world different. It's like, when you're trying to meet your own needs, you get a certain level of insight. If you're trying to meet the needs of your family, you get a different level of insight because life supports whatever supports more of life, more people. If you're trying to support your community, different insight. If you're trying to have an impact on the world, it's even larger. And I found in network marketing, you find a few missionaries that are like those other entrepreneurs that really is their mission. They'd honestly do it for free. And they want to make money, and they do make money. But if you're only doing it for the money, the unfortunate part is people sense that, and then they feel like it's just a transaction as opposed to an experience of added value. There's only one way on earth to really become wealthy, and that is do more for others than anybody else is doing. Just think of it this way. If you got the greatest computer in the world and you plug it in, there's not enough electricity, it's not going to work right. Well, tired is the first step to being depressed for most people. Yeah. And most people are tired not because they're working so hard. Like, oh man, I worked so hard today. Well, what'd you do? Oh, I had meeting after meeting. I sat in these meetings, and I talked to people, or I make calls, or I sent emails, and they're like, I'm exhausted. Yeah. I mean, what's happened is we haven't pushed ourselves physiologically for so long that we've gotten weaker and weaker. And so we feel tired from doing nothing. Mm-hmm. And so what you learn when you go through a weekend like that is, holy shit, there is a level of energy on command that's available to me that you never believe. But by being in the environment over and over again, you learn it's real and you learn to use it. And when there's enough energy, everything else works better. Your relationship is not going to be great no matter what tools you have
if you're tired. Because you're going to go, love you. You know, there's no passion. There's no aliveness, right? You're not going to grow your business when you're tired. So a huge part of what I teach, even in Unleash the Power Within, UPW, by the way, for people not been there, it's called Unleash the Power Within. It's a weekend. And on the fourth day, it's all energy. It's all about the things you do with your health and vitality. So you sustain that, because without that, nothing else really matters. Fear is the number one thing that keeps people from doing what's necessary. And anger and rage, while it can mobilize us, if it becomes part of your life on a regular basis, it destroys it. So how do you balance that out? Well, fear, anger, they're both physical, aren't they? Think about, what do you feel like if you're really, ever been so afraid that your throat got really dry, or you feel this feeling in your gut, right? That's physical. Courage is also physical. Again, courage does not mean you're not afraid. Courage means you're afraid, but you do it anyway, right? It's a way of being in your body. So one of the things that I started doing early on is understanding, and those of you who spent 4 days with me, you know, day and night, because we did it, and it's in your body still, how to change the way you feel instantly by a radical change in your body. And so I really want to recommend you do something at least 5 days a week. First thing when you wake up in the morning, it doesn't have to be an hour workout, even 30 minutes. It can be something as little as 5 or 10 minutes. There is not a day when I wake up, I've shared with some of you this already. First thing I do, I go outside, and if I'm lucky enough to be at one of my homes anyway, I have homes in different parts of the world because I've traveled the world and done this. So I'm very fortunate, but I have a cold plunge I've installed in everyone, 56 degrees. In my home in Sun Valley, Idaho, I don't have a cold plunge. I don't need it. I walk through the snow in the winter, or in the summer, I walk through the grass, and I get in the river. And literally, the river is usually about 39 to 42 degrees, to give you an idea. Every cell in your body is moved. The blood rushes through everything, right? And I do it for 2 reasons. There's never a day I look forward to doing it. I don't go, I can't wait to go in there. I do it, number one, because it transforms your body. The blood flow, the lymph flow is unbelievable from a health perspective. You just go in for a minute, pop out, and it's like a different world, right? I don't care what it is. Or you could take a freezing shower, would be the minimum way you could do this if you couldn't do this. But it's about changing your body so radically. And it's also about developing a simple daily discipline. It's like, I don't negotiate with myself. I tell my brain, I don't go, oh, wait, I'm not ready. Or let me count to 10, or maybe I'll do it tomorrow. That pattern of thinking is what destroys most people's lives and their dreams. You can settle for a life like most people have, or you can create your dreams, but to do it, you need to be able to push yourself. So you need to train yourself in little ways. One of the things you have to understand about life is everything changes and everything ends. And that kind of sounds heavy on the front end, but it's a truth. If everything changes and everything ends, number one, it should make you appreciate what you have right now. And then my view is what's next is always better. If I make it so, it's my job to make it so. And so I think, for me, I look at it and say, when you said genius is a young man's game, I think that's total bullshit. I think passion is the genesis of genius. If you've got enough passion, you're going to find answers nobody else does. But most people run out of fuel, meaning they get tired, they get exhausted, they get burnt out, they get, the law of familiarity. They're around something so much, they take it a little bit for granted. And I've managed to see something in myself that I found in every great leader that I've ever respected. And that is, I value intelligence immensely, but I know really smart people can't fight their way out of a paper bag pragmatically, right? I'm sure you do too. What I see as the one common denominator of people that are successful over a lifetime is the sustained hunger. Hunger is the number one factor.
Hey, thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. So I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button and follow my YouTube channel, because the next episode with Andrew Tate is about to come. See you soon, guys.
The secret to living is giving, because you're never going to be happy by what you get. You get it, you'll be excited for a while, for how long? But if you keep giving, you'll become something unique, that whether other people know it or not, you will know who you are. People can take away all your things. They can't take away who you become as a man or as a woman, as a soul. So business is a spiritual game. How can I do more for others than anybody else? How can I do it consistently? How can I do it better? How can I fall in love with my clients and just over-deliver at levels they can't even imagine? And develop this beautiful relationship of such joy. It isn't a transaction. There are transactions involved, but you're not doing it for the transaction. You're doing it to make that difference in their business or their life. When you're driven by a mission more than yourself, you get a level of energy that people just trying to take of themselves will never have. So my heartfelt wish for you, my dear friends, is remember what business is. It's a spiritual game. It's about what can you give, not what can you get. You'll get plenty if you'll give much more than you expect to receive. If you do that, you'll have more than money. You have a life of incredible meaning, and your life will be blessed. I made the decision, it's the most important decision I believe of your life, that I'm not going to suffer anymore. Life's too short to suffer, and I'm going to live in a beautiful state every day. And the way I do it is, I catch myself when I start to get that sense of stress, I let it go, and I see the idea go by.